Right. Thanks for coming. Thanks for inviting me. This is actually not just about funding. This is sort of, it turns out that there are 3 books that I have. One is almost ready. About 3.
Press the back button and move to your left.
There you go. It's afraid you're going to get lasered.
Right.
Oh.
It has a laser.
Yeah, I might need to do it from the side.
It says that you have a saying that says, do not look into the laser with your reading eye.
So, so, 3 books, which I'll mention in a moment. So, I'm imagining that there are a lot of people who just say, let's just get rid of schools. But let's assume for a minute that we're going to have schools. We're going to have a public school system. And we would like to have a reasonably functional public school system, one that we can actually depend on to do things. And I believe there are 3 things that we need to absolutely stop doing and stop doing as soon as possible. And the first one is we need to stop thinking that fairness is about money. So I think a lot of you know that Andrew Valinsky and his friends have been traveling around the state for years now, probably 5 years, trying to convince everybody that funding is about, or fairness is about money. We've got to stop that. We need to stop using what I call the pay and pray model of financing to fund schools, and I'll talk about that. And we need to stop stuffing so many boxes under the umbrella labeled school, and I'll talk about all of these things.
Can everybody in the back here look good?
Am I loud enough?
Yeah, this is
Pretty
good.
All right. So we can flip that. People don't like to be told to. Yeah. Okay. Nobody likes to just be told don't do this, so we can rephrase this positively. Things that we need to start doing. The flip sides of those, and the first one is we need to make fairness, the idea of fairness, which is so compelling and so emotional for so many people. We need to make it about what is learned, and not as what is what is taxed, what is spent. We need to start using the standard commerce model, the standard model of commerce to pay for learning rather than instruction. And we need to start limiting schools to what's mandatory and offloading everything else to someplace else. So, technology. So like I said, each of these ideas is actually the basis for one of these books. The third one over here is going to be published imminently. But I'm going to talk about all 3 of the ideas, and then I'm going to tie them together at the end. So, first, fairness. So, who hasn't seen these? So, there are, as I said, Andrew Valinsky and other people have tried to make fairness about money, and the problem is, it can't be about money. And there are some reasons, some really good reasons for that. The first reason is, the amount of money that we spend makes absolutely no difference, okay? So there are 3 graphs here that I think everybody needs to see because I think you can't unsee them. The first one, top left, is a graph put together by the Cato Institute, Andrew Coulson. And it uses the government's figures for spending and the government's figures for testing using the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is a test put together by the education establishment to say, here's how you'll know what kind of job we're doing. And that shows you what kind of job they're doing. So the spending is adjusted for inflation, so there's no tricky monetary effects going on there. And what it shows is over about half a century, we've tripled per student spending, and achievement has just flatlined, either gone down or stayed the same. And over time, if you look at that more finely, what you see is sort of what I call the NAEP tide, which is you'll see some improvements and everybody goes, this is great, and then some, it'll go down a little and people, we got to spend more money, and then it goes up a little, but it is like a tide. So the second graph right here is a particular NAEP test for a particular year. I believe it's 4th grade reading, but all the tests look about the same. No matter what test you look at, you get this picture. And what the picture tells you is we're looking at how much they spend per student, and in this particular year, this particular test, states were spending between $7,000 and $24,000 per student. Okay, wild difference.
700.
7,000.
7,000.
7,000. You just said 7.
Sorry, 7,000, 24,000 per student. And you can see basically no significant difference really between these. Now they will sometimes blow this up using the old, assuming people don't actually understand algebra or math, and they'll blow it up and it looks like there's some differences, but there's no real difference. So what's really interesting about this is this red line, and again, this happens on every one you look at. The red line is what would be considered the absolute minimum passing score for this test. So all states are failing. Some states are failing a little, and I mean a little less badly than other states. So when you hear states saying, yeah, we're at the top of the rankings, this is what they're talking about, okay? The third graph, my favorite, is one that Jody and I put together following one of Valinsky's presentations, where he had done some data manipulation to make it look like there had been no change since Claremont. And we were like, what? So we went and actually got the data, loaded up.
No change in funding.
No change in funding, that everything was just as unfair, right? It was like literally, and he did a bunch of tricks, and I wrote about it somewhere else. It's fascinating, but what this is showing you, again, all this is adjusted for inflation. What this is showing you is the blue line is all the districts in New Hampshire and what they were spending per student before Claremont. And the other line is what they're spending after Claremont. Okay? Again, adjusted for inflation. These are directly comparable. This is not an artifact of it being later. This is an artifact of it being more. And so what's interesting is you can draw a similar line to this, okay, which would actually tell you that every district, with the exception of Waterville Valley, which is an anomaly, every district is spending more than any district was before. In terms of spending, every district in New Hampshire is spending like a rich district, and yet no change in achievement, okay? So basically money doesn't matter. If you just keep doing the same thing with the money, you could spend half the money, you could spend twice as much, you spend all the money there is, and we would expect to just keep seeing the same thing. So there's a joke I really like. There's a cop walking down the street, and he sees a guy crawling around in a parking lot under a lamppost, and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I lost my keys, I'm looking for them. So the cop goes, well, I'll help you. So they start looking, and they look, and they look, and finally the cop's like, are you sure you lost your keys here? Because we're not seeing them. He's like, oh, I didn't lose them here, I lost them over in the park. And the cop says, well, why are you looking for them here? And he says, well, the light's better here. Okay? And so, usually what I will tell people is, if you take away nothing else from anything you ever hear me say, it should be this, that money is the lamppost of education, right? If we are talking about money, if you were in a conversation about money and you were talking about tax rates, or you're talking about who we're going to take money from, who we're going to give it to, how it should be split up, if you are basically using numbers, you've lost, okay? It means you're in the parking lot, and you need to get out of the parking lot and get over to the park, where you start talking about things like, how is it that we could put a kid in a school for 12 years and he doesn't learn to read? What's going on there, right? It's not a money thing, it's something else. And we will never have that discussion until we stop having the discussion about money. All right, so the third problem to making this about money is no matter how much we spend or who we spend it on or what kind of curricula, what we do with it in the current model, anything we do will be unfair to students and to taxpayers. And so this is sort of a picture that I think summarizes the whole thing that's wrong. So what we have is, our model is we stick a kid in at age 5 or 6 and we let him go until age 18, and whatever happens, happens. And so some kids start out doing pretty well already because of their parents. They get to a point where they actually have an adequate education by any reasonable definition that you could create, but they're stuck there for some number of years, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, and we have to find something for them to do. So we keep them busy with things like band and drama and sports. We let them take AP courses. We give them all this stuff that no taxpayer should be paying for, because it is beyond the adequate education that the Supreme Court has decided that we're responsible for. And this blue triangle represents all the things that this student isn't learning. So he gets to be 18 and he can't read, he can't do math. We give him a diploma and we say good luck. Okay? So this is unfair to taxpayers, this is unfair to students. And it's also unfair to taxpayers because a lot of these students, depending on how big that triangle is, will end up needing public help. They'll need assistance, they will have trouble making money, they won't be able to contribute as much as they could. So this is the current system, and changing the amount of money we spend does nothing at all to change that picture. So my goal is to get people to think about this picture. This is a picture of fairness. Everybody starts where they, and I actually changed it a little, but everybody would start where they start, as old as they are. Maybe some kids going at 3, maybe some kids going at 8. You start when you need to, you go until you get to the finish line, and then you leave. And all the resources that would have been in this red triangle can be devoted to getting the other kids up to that level, right? So, in sum, you learn that if you're a kid in this system, you learn the same things as everybody else. You start when you're ready, you take as much or as little time as you need, and for the taxpayers, the taxes are only used to pay for public benefit and never for private enrichment. Not for things, they pay for what everybody needs and not for what some people want. And that's the distinction, because it's when you ignore that you get into things that are incredibly unfair. So the second book is Rethinking Funding. And so if you think about all the goods and services that you have, they get better and cheaper every year. The things you buy, your computer, your gun, you all have guns, right? So your guns, your holsters, your cars, your computers, your watches, all the things that get better and cheaper. The quality goes up, the price goes down, or it sort of stays the same for a while. And if you think about those things, if you made a big pile of them, you look at them and go, they have nothing in common except, they're divide them into services and physical objects maybe. But they do actually have something unobvious in common, which is the way we pay for them. And this is what I call the standard model of commerce, okay? In the standard model of commerce, you specify exactly what you're going to get. I'm going to get this computer and it's going to have this much memory and it's going to have this stuff installed. I'm going to get a car with these features. I'm going to get pants and they'll be made of this and they'll be this size. Whatever it is you're buying, you say, this is what I'm going to get. I'm going to have these tires put on my car. I'm going to have these shingles put on my roof and they will be these shingles, whatever. So you specify what you're going to get and then you get it and then you pay for it, right? And the order is crucial. And there's a fourth part, which is if there's a problem, either it gets fixed or you get your money back. And this is how we expect everything to work. It's like water to fish. You don't even notice it until it breaks down, right? So again, just imagine you go to Walmart, you buy a toaster, you take it home, you plug it in, it doesn't work. You go back to Walmart and they say, yeah, tough. Okay, and you'd be like, are you filming this? No, you're gonna give me my money back or give me a new toaster or something, right? So that's what we do for everything, almost everything. So if we look at this graph, we find that schools are kind of an anomaly here. That every year they get more expensive, and either they stay about the same or they get worse. And so you think, well, what is going on? Again, goods and services up here, schools down here. And so I believe, and the point of this book is to say, I think this is because for schools we use what I call the pay and pray model of funding. And the pay and pray model of funding is you pay up front without actually saying exactly what it is you're supposed to get, and then you hope for the best, and then when you don't get it, you try again. That's how we pay for schools. And so, so one of the things about the standard commerce model is, if you want, people like the word accountability. If you want to build accountability into a process, here's how you do it. You pay people after they finish the job. That way, the accountability is baked in and can't be extracted or finessed or gained. If you would like the opposite of that, then what you do is you pay people money whether they do anything or not. And at that point, accountability, in any real sense, becomes impossible. You can have them certified, they can get certificates, they can go jump through hoops, they can do all this stuff. But if they don't do the job, you pay them anyways, and so there is no accountability. So I am a big fan of Charles Kettering because of this thing he said. He said, a problem well posed is half solved. And what that means is, if you ask a question or you pose a problem in the right way, the way you ask it actually points you in the direction of the answer. Conversely, if you ask the wrong question, it points you away from the right answer. And the interesting thing about that is, even if you get the right answer to the wrong question, it's still the wrong answer. So it doesn't help you. And so I bring this up because we, I believe, people who are trying to fix the schools, are always asking this question: what are we doing wrong in schools? And that is just a question that allows for unlimited screwing around. And I think instead we should be asking this question: what are we doing right everywhere else? And I think one of the major things that we're doing right everywhere else is we use the standard model of commerce everywhere else. And things, by and large, run very smoothly, and we get the things we want when we think we're going to get them, and if there's a problem, it gets fixed. So the point of this particular book is to make the case that until we stop paying up front for promises and good intentions and start paying after the fact for results, anything else that we do to try to fix schools, whether it has to do with money or new curriculum, or we're going to hire more teachers, less teachers, all of those things, I now believe, are meaningless until we change this, because we're going to just keep paying people whether they do anything or not. So the third book is Rethinking Fun in Education. It had to be a third F. And so we start with this idea. So a lot of you have probably heard of the tragedy of the commons, which is a phrase made up by an ecologist named Garrett Hardin. And the basic idea in the tragedy of the commons is, if you have resources that are not owned by anybody, they tend to get overused and destroyed because nobody owns them. Nobody really wants to take care of them. So I have come up with something that sounds similar, which I call the travesty of the umbrella. And the travesty of the umbrella is this. Let's say that there's something X, and we subsidize it. If I can take something else Y, which is not really part of X, but I can get everybody to say it's part of X, I push it under the umbrella, and Y is now subsidized, which is a screaming deal for people who want that thing, right? Because now they don't have to pay for it. We just get it as part of X. So, it's useful to think about this. So, let's imagine that X is healthcare. Okay? We're going to subsidize healthcare. Everybody should be able to get a doctor. Everybody should be able to have healthcare. And so, suppose people start reasoning this way. They say, you know what? It's no use having a doctor if I can't get to him. So, we should make transportation part of healthcare, and we should subsidize it under Medicare, Medicaid, whatever. And, I can't go to the doctor if somebody doesn't watch my kids, so we should subsidize healthcare, or daycare, as part of healthcare. And, in the same way, if I can't afford to eat, we should subsidize food as part of healthcare. I mean, that should all be covered. If I can't dress myself or do certain things and get to the thing, then that whatever therapy I need should be part of healthcare. If I have family problems, right, and I get bullied at home, or I'm bullying people, or for whatever reason, I can't get out of my house to see the doctor, so whatever social work I need should be part of healthcare, right? And so you think, that all makes sense, right? No, of course it doesn't. That would be insane. We would never do something like that. Except, we actually do. This is exactly what we do in school. We just start calling all this stuff school, and now it gets subsidized and paid for with school taxes, right? Except it's actually a lot worse, because we subsidize all kinds of stuff, much, much more than I was talking about. And, if you're looking for a reason why schools cost so much and perform so poorly, I think this is a really nice picture of it. If you're doing all of these things, you're not going to do any of them well. And the more boxes you have, and this is much more relevant, especially, what's going on in Claremont, You got so many boxes under there. There should be a box under there named literacy, and one named numeracy, but you can't even find them, and maybe they've just been shoved out the back, and nobody's going to notice because you've got so much other stuff going on. So, I'm from Croydon. Some of you heard about our little kerfuffle there, our budget battle. So, long story short, I wrote a pamphlet. I handed it out at our annual district meeting for our school district, and in the time it took voters to read it, they were persuaded to replace the usual ransom with a budget. So everybody, the difference, of course, is a budget is when you have a certain amount of money to work with, and you set priorities and do whatever you can do with that amount of money, and you have to not do certain things. A ransom, on the other hand, is when you basically say, here's how much money I want, you give it to me or I'll hurt you. And so, we were presented with a ransom of $1.7 million. Give us $1.7 million or we'll take your homes. During the meeting, that was turned around, and the offer was made from the people to the board. We think $10,000 per student is enough. We have this many students. Let's imagine some more come in. We'll give you $800,000. Make it work. And they voted for that. And it wasn't even that close a vote. And people have said later, there was a snowstorm, it was packed with 3 stagers. It was the same people who have been there every year for the 15 years we've been there. They just read something that basically said, you know what? This is ridiculous. Maybe we should try something that could work instead of continuing to do something we know won't work. That costs twice as much. So, that was fun. It was it was fun. The subsequent part was not fun, okay? There's a book about this called The Croydon Budget Battle, and it's about how this decision that was made at the annual meeting was overturned by a special meeting after a giant smear and fear campaign, which is worth reading because of what you guys are going through now in Claremont. But here's the reason I mention it. We learned something very important during this time. So my wife Jody was on the school board, and the school board kept asking parents, look, we don't have all the money that we normally would have. What are your academic priorities? And what we found was that,
Yes, parents.
what are your priorities? And we found they had no academic priorities. They were interested in making sure the kid was picked up in the morning, dropped off at night, that he would be with his friends, that he would be able to do extracurricular activities, play sports, whatever. And so finally, at first, we were just incredibly frustrated. And then finally, I don't know when it dawned on me, it was like, here's what they're telling us. They don't want a school. They want a community center. And so this book sort of asks, well, what if we gave them one? How would that work? Okay? So, not that I'm a big fan of the state Supreme Court, but if you take them at their word, they did define adequate education in a pretty reasonable way, right? They said an adequate education is one that provides each educable child with the opportunity to acquire the knowledge and learning necessary to participate intelligently in the American political, economics, and social systems of free government. So what if you took that seriously? Okay? We can have a discussion about educable, which nobody has ever had. That word appears nowhere else in statute or court decisions. We can have a discussion about opportunity, since right now, in the world we live in today, if you have an internet connection and a computer, you have the opportunity to learn anything that anybody's ever known, and you have dozens or hundreds of people lined up to teach it to you for free just for the joy of teaching other people, right? But let's talk about the word necessary, okay? So, if it's necessary to know something in order to participate in a free government, then it had better be mandatory. We shouldn't be letting kids get through school without learning the things that are necessary. And to turn that on its head, you could say, if something isn't mandatory, then it's clearly not necessary, right? So playing a team sport, is that mandatory? No, it's not. Taking AP Calculus? No, it's not. Learning to play an instrument, learning a foreign language, those are all nice things, but they're not necessary. And we would never make them mandatory. You can just imagine, and this would be fun for people in Claremont, to go in and present an idea like this and say, yeah, we're going to make every kid play a team sport. And you watch some of the parents going, what? No way. We're going to make every kid learn to weld. No, I don't think we're doing that, right? We're going to make every kid learn to read. Okay, there's not going to be a lot of fight about that. And so this is where the sorting hat from Harry Potter, if you haven't seen the movie, every kid who comes to the school, they put a hat on him, and it looks inside his mind, and it decides which of the, not dormitories, houses, which of the houses he's going to be in. You go to Hufflepuff, or you go to Slytherin, or whatever. Okay? So I'm thinking, they have given us this hat. And here's what we do. We look at every specific thing that might be taught in a school. And by a specific thing, I do not mean like technology, where some kids, technology would mean I learned to make a spreadsheet, and for other kids, technology is I learned to build a robot, right? Specific things that people need to do, for example, to be able to look at a statistical result and tell whether it makes any sense. You need to be able to do that. Whether that's in algebra class, statistics class, whether it's in a rhetoric class, it doesn't matter where you learn that thing, what the subject name is. What matters is you better know how to do that, because you're going to be asked to do that as a citizen every time a public policy is based on statistics. So the hat looks at every single thing that we might teach in a school, and it says, you know, if it's like this is a thing that every kid in every school needs to learn, goes in school. And if it's not, it goes somewhere else. It could be a community center. It could be a hospital. It could be a social work office. It could be a food bank. It could be a private charity. It could be a church. Somewhere else. Okay? So, to sort of sum up, I believe, if we took these three ideas that I've been talking about seriously, right? One, the fairness is about learning, not about spending. That we should pay for learning the way we pay for everything else. And we should use schools for things that everyone needs and use other institutions for things that some people want. If we took those three ideas, they're like the legs on a stool. If you've got all three, you have a chance to actually have a reasonable functioning school system. You might still screw it up, right? There are still things that go wrong, but you need that. And I think that if we don't have all three of those, come on. If we don't have all three of them, then everything we will just keep getting what we've been getting, which is terrible results for too much money. And the problem right now is we have none of those. None of those legs are on that stool, and this is our current situation.
I want the crossed eyes.
Yeah.
I want the crossed eyes.
Yes. That's okay. Yeah, I was
Crossed
trying to
eyes,
think,
man.
what is that? So I want to return to tie it up. I want to go back to Charles Kettering and talk about asking the right question. So this is basically the question we keep asking, we keep fighting over, and keep trying to decide. And we have legislatures, and we have the Department of Education. Everybody's trying. How should the government educate children? And I'm going to say this is the wrong question. It's the wrong question for a lot of reasons. For one thing, it conflates government and society, and those are two different institutions. And there are things that governments should do, like protect rights, and there are things like society that society should do, like have people figure out how to help each other. Okay? And the big difference, of course, is government operates on coercion. It's always some people making somebody else do something that they don't want to do, whereas society, you have to persuade people. Okay? And that's a huge distance. So when you have the government doing things, you basically turn what should be a cooperative search for a win-win solution into a competitive win-lose solution. Okay? So that's where the original question leads you. It leads you in that direction, which is not a direction that we really should be going. So the second thing, it fails to distinguish between children whose parents could afford to educate them and parents who can't. Okay? And though to treat those two groups the same is kind of crazy, but the question, if we think of it, the government should educate, not we should avoid leaving children uneducated, which is very different, right? So you think, leads to a whole different set of solutions. And also, this is something that really didn't occur to me until recently, the concept of what it means to be educated is so amorphous and undefined, and people have been arguing about it since Aristotle, right? You get entire books on this. This is what it means to be educated. No, 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 this is what it means to be educated. And this is one of the reasons. So I love this guy, Zig Ziglar, who once said, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. And I think that's one of the things that's going on when you try to use the word educated, and we're trying to educate kids. And I think on the other hand, the term uneducated, there's much, much more agreement on. So I think we could all look at people and say, well, if you can't read, you may be a very charming and productive person, but you're not educated, right? There are a lot of things that go into that, and in some sense, if you can be lied to in a certain number of very easy ways, you're not educated. You're uneducated, and we need to avoid that. It's not a goal this aspirational goal that we need to be reaching towards. It is essentially a disease that we are trying to eradicate, right? So, fourth, it assumes that education is only necessary for children, which actually could not be farther from the truth. Just walk around. Go to places, go to Walmart, go to McDonald's, go to Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, there are adults who really could benefit from education. If what we're trying to do is educate people, we would approach this completely differently. And finally, just by asking, how should we do this? We're actually assuming that there's one best way to do things, which we should then fight over and vote on and agree to, although in that case, for up to half the people, agreement is actually just capitulation. I'm not agreeing to this at all, but you're basically going to take my house if I don't give you my money. So it changes the nature of it. Just by asking what can we do opens up a range of possibilities, whereas what should we do actually forces you to try to find a one-size-fits-all solution. And so I think if we ask the question this way, then this leads us, we are much more likely to make progress towards something that will actually be good for all of us. And so then you might say, well, how can I know that? And we know this because we have done this already. We have asked this about other things where kids are unfed and unclothed and unsheltered and unheated and untreated and unconnected. And we have found many, many ways to do this, to deal with this. And so my question really that I'm asking is, if we have a way of asking that question for all these other things that by and large works, why would we not do it for education? So that's basically what I came to tell you. We do have these 3 books, and if you're a state rep or a state senator, or I don't think any of you are on the executive council, and none of you is the governor right now, right? So,
Not yet.
but if you are an elected official, or you know an elected official who would like to get these, we will supply them for free. So check with Jody, make sure she has your information. We have some here tonight if you want them. But I would like to get the ideas out there, and my ultimate goal is actually to get some state reps, state senators together and sit down and say, what would it look like to start and say, we're going to build public education on that stool with those 3 ideas, which will short circuit a lot of the things that have been going wrong. So that's my goal. So thank you. Are there any questions?
I'm interested to know, have you ever debated Andrew Valinsky or have plans to debate him?
I have not. I think somebody that I know was trying to set that up, and I think he didn't want to do
I
it.
think I just said that.
Yeah, I think it would be.
Who could set that up, though?
Yeah, who could set that
Who
up?
do you know who could set that up?
Hope Damon.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that would be fun.
That'd be really fun.
I would love to see that debate.
I mean, I can picture it already in my mind, and I think what would happen is somebody would ask a question, he would tap dance around a bunch of stuff, and I'd say, let's go back to first principles. Do we have the power to do this? No, we don't. So it doesn't matter. All the stuff you just said doesn't matter because we can't do it, right?
Don't tell them what it's gonna
So
look like.
whatever. Anyways, I think it would be, my answers would be fairly short and like we can't do this. Or in the case of like, oh, we should do this and this and this. Oh, we're still doing pay and pray because now you're just trying to build a perpetual motion machine. If you don't do this, it doesn't matter what you do. So anyways, but it would be fun to do that, sure. So I'm all for it. I just don't know how to make that happen. Yes.
Question is, He's more on the Congress side. Will he be willing to do the big check?
I don't see what he has to gain.
Yes. Nothing to gain and everything to
Nothing
lose.
gain and everything to lose, right? Because I would be able to say things that people would actually understand.
I
So,
think it was 2 summers ago, he spoke at Sunapee. It was,
Yeah,
it
we
was
were
Yeah.
about, and so we got to ask him questions. And I told him my personal story of, leaving Brooklyn to go to a suburb that had a good school system, right as the state of New Jersey did exactly what he was proposing, which was level the education spending across the state. And as a result, here we are, 40 years later, they had sky-high taxes and piss-poor proficiency. What's to keep the exact same thing happening here in New Hampshire? And if I remember, he said, Bahama, 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 or words to that effect.
So,
yes.
So the thing that mystifies me the most, having sat in education committee for 3 years, is why we put up with abysmal numbers for proficiency. And how you can put that on your face is that you're doing your job. And they put it on like we're doing all we can and this is the best we can get. Well, I could do that with my eyes shut.
Well, so I will just suggest this. Suppose that we start, what would be the alternative to Amazon? I don't know. We're going to start a business. And the way it'll work is you'll send me money and then I'll decide what to give you for it. So how long would I stay in business? I wouldn't. What if I could send people with guns to your house to make you write those checks? How long would I stay in business?
A lot longer.
That's right. I think that's all that's going on. And that's why it took me a long time to get this insight into the funding thing. And I wish I remembered how it happened, but it was just like this flash one day. It's like, well, of course. There's a great Dilbert cartoon, right, where Dilbert and Wally are dancing around going, I did nothing and I got paid anyways, and it's like, okay.
At one of the crisis meetings in August, standing and speaking in front of the principal and what was left of the administration, a senior said that the reason why the proficiency scores were so low is because the students knew it didn't make a difference, that they would get into whatever college they wanted to
And
anyway.
pass on to the next grade regardless of what they do.
Well, no, they think that they're going to get into. This was a senior who was convinced that the proficiency would not impact.
Oh, you
Her-
said senior, high school senior.
Yes.
I'm thinking
Yeah, no, no.
80-year-old.
No. This is like 17 years.
that's a New England perspective now, isn't it? Oh, you're a native.
But
Yeah, that's
having
right.
this young woman stand there and say it in front of the principal of Stevens was, it was like out of a Monty Python movie. Fortunately, the assistant superintendent almost had a stroke and explained that no, not only is you might have found some way to game the system, but in general, not only are you hurting yourself, you're hurting everybody else
Right.
by pulling down the proficiency scores
Yeah.
so that people don't want to live here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So I guess I'd put that back and say, what are your options? So here's some crappy test scores, and here's some increasing costs. What are your options? What do you think your options are? And if you are constrained to doing what we did last year, and just tweaking some numbers, you have no options at all. Can you get a refund? I mean, that would be something. What if you could go to the schools and say, you know what, nobody learned anything, give us the money back, okay?
We
Well,
have
every other
to.
test I
We have
take,
a full
yeah.
agenda, so
All right.
are there any other questions?
I just want to say, this is good perspective, thank you. Because I have another perspective on it,
Okay.
but and it's the effect of all of this on property. So this whole concept of poor and rich, and I'm blessed, our family's been blessed, we have property on Lake Suffern.
Mhm.
I have watched my neighborhood be destroyed for tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And shoreline protection, I can tell you, it is out the window. There is nothing. And so every time, and what's happening is the public trust, the public benefit of clean water is now cyanobacteria blooming this way, E. coli here, oh, let's throw more money at it. Instead of saying, wait a minute, we have a buffer zone, we have the technology in place, and it's not technology, it's natural resource. Let's protect it, but we don't.
Well, that's that's the tragedy of the commons, right? Nobody actually owns it.
It's us, no, we do own it.
Well,
Sort of,
you
I
own
guess.
it as a
That's
group,
our
which now
argument,
fights
but
over
the
it.
thing of it is that it's being exploited to pay for political.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
So the exploitation is now causing another public problem.
yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.